Welcome to Life After, a podcast for women to take you from feeling like you're just surviving to thriving, to creating a life you really love. Expect to discover tips and tricks to get there. Each episode will have actionable steps to empower you to make changes. I started this podcast because I've been through it all, from getting out of a marriage with a narcissist to completely rebuilding my life. And now I'm on a mission to help you too. You can change your life. It's absolutely possible. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome, my friends, to this week's episode of the Life After podcast. I'm so excited that you're here, and today's topic is going to be, I think you're going to find it an interesting one. We are going to talk about empathy. When I originally thought about what this episode would look like, I was really thinking about how when you're empathetic, it can be used against you when you are involved in any kind of relationship with a toxic person or a narcissist, whether it's with your partner, an ex, a parent or family member, coworker, boss. So this is kind of a loaded topic. When you are a highly empathetic person, you can definitely have that empathetic nature used against you, especially in narcissistic relationships, right? Narcissists are looking for those things that they don't have, and they don't have any empathy. That's why I feel like it's really important that we talk about this. So, the hope is that this'll give you some insights, some tips and tricks, of course, so that you're less likely to fall into the pitfalls that this can create. And I'm definitely not advocating for being less empathetic. Let's get that out right away. And of course, my interest in talking about this and sharing my own stories is not to air my dirty laundry. Instead, it's to hopefully give someone else some perspective that allows you to think about the situation you might be in, and maybe then be able to make a change that improves your own situation. And maybe to even help you remove yourself or give yourself some space in that toxic or narcissistic relationship, if that's possible, right? Sometimes we can't get away from our narcissist. Okay, let's start with empathy. So what does it mean to have empathy? So the, Google definition is empathy is the ability to understand, share, and experience the feelings and perspectives of another person. Please know that there's a difference between having empathy, being empathetic for someone, pardon me, and doing for others what they should be doing for themselves. Should is such one of those judgmental words. I think it still applies in this case. And I want to be so super clear here, because having empathy is a gift. It's a gift. And if you are a highly empathetic person, you probably haven't been told that most of your life. You've probably been told, stop being so sensitive. Empathy is really a gift. Where sometimes we get conditioned is over-functioning for other people is not. Someone that has a high level of empathy, we often believe that we're being compassionate and empathetic, when in reality, we're actually trying to take responsibility for another person's emotions, for their behavior. And sometimes, especially if we work in a healing profession, they're healing. And those aren't the same thing. Being empathetic and trying to do for others what they either aren't or won't or can't do for themselves, those aren't the same thing. We simply can't control what other people do. We can only control what we do. And I think the part that sometimes we miss, I certainly missed for a very long time, is adding that empathy, being empathetic for ourselves and having self-compassion. That's really critical, especially when it comes to this over-functioning part. If you are in any kind of relationship with a narcissist and a potentially a toxic person, they are going to be perfectly happy for you to handle their emotional and often invisible their baggage, right? They're often trying to hide it. Also, know that empathy doesn't require agreement. So you can understand why someone reacted the way that they did and still decide that you're not going to accept or condone their behavior. Those two things can coexist together. I didn't know that for a really long time, but they can. We can be empathetic and not agree. I have a really, really, really good friend. She knows who she is, and she'll know when she hears this that it's her, who does this beautiful job with the narcissistic person in her life, family member in her life, of saying, yeah, I understand how hard that can be. I understand that must be really tough, right? So she is so empathetic and yet doesn't feed in to the narcissist's narrative. I'll give you an example that, of course, comes from my marriage. Don't all of my examples come from there, it seems like. So we all know, if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for being here. If not, you know that my ex was. I'm not quite sure. Just because he's not actively involved in my life anymore, do I say he was a narcissist? And he took so much advantage of me and my empathetic skills. He did it in two different ways. So in the first way, he used my empathy against me when it came to something that was his self-interest. So what I mean by that is that if he had done something, and of course, it was only really in hindsight that I recognized just exactly how often he was lying to me or hiding things from me. So he'd do something, for example, that he knew would make me upset. And when I would find out, he would approach the situation in such a way that he'd create this narrative that, as an empathetic person, would make me feel bad for him. He was always the victim. He'd try to get me to look at the situation and see it from his perspective and try to understand and try to give him some grace. The thing is, though, and that's what we do as empathetic people, and that seems so reasonable. The thing is, though, when someone that does that to you over and over and over and over and over again, you start to feel a pattern, even if you don't actively recognize the pattern, right? Your brain starts to get it, your body starts to get it, even if you're not actively, even if you're, let's just say, still in a little bit denial. It still gets tiring and it's trying. And so what happened was, over time, when he did this again and again, it started to impact my ability to feel that empathy, right? Because it's very one-sided. And in turn, then I would be less empathetic, right? It's kind of that he was crying wolf in some sense. And I would get less empathetic over time. And then, as a narcissist, he would accuse me of being intolerant. Or he'd tell me that I wasn't kind or that I wasn't understanding. And he used those exact things that he knew were things that were really important values to me, and he'd twist them. And in order to get compliance and to get me to step back into that empathetic role which would allow him to do whatever he wanted, he would start to accuse me and twist that narrative. Right? It's kind of sneaky, right? It's kind of a sneaky little game. The second way he would take advantage of my empathy was in not taking any responsibility, right? If you are in any way, shape, or form involved with a narcissistic personality, you already know they're not going to take any responsibility for what they do. And if you suspect that you might have a narcissist in your life, this is one way to tell. Are they taking any responsibility? When there is an issue, how do they handle it? So that emotional baggage that they carry, and they don't have empathy, so they try to push it onto you, right? They try to put you in the role of carrying their emotional load. So here's a couple of examples about that. His dad once dumped a $20,000 credit card bill on us, and my ex didn't get angry at all. So I got angry for the both of us. And then I had to justify why it was, my empathetic side finally, when I calmed down enough, jumped in to then give all the excuses as to why, we had to support his dad. And I had to manage both of their excuses for the situation that we were in, right? One of his closest friends, one of my ex's closest friends, came out as trans while we were married. And my ex didn't show any emotion at all. None. So I felt as the empathetic person that I am, felt that I had to step in and reach out to the friend, ask the questions, make sure that she was comfortable and supported. And I could give you examples like this that go on for days, but then I'd just start to sound bitter. I'd start to sound like that that classic bitter ex-wife. We're not going to do that. But suffice it to say, when you are an empathetic person and you are in a relationship with someone that's toxic or narcissistic, you will end up carrying not just your emotional load, but theirs as well. So I think of it a little bit in terms of, what's that old adage? The first time something's done to you, it's shame on you, the other party, for doing it. And the second time something happens, it's shame on me for letting me allow it to happen, right? To not seeing it. Well, what happens when it's the 167th time, right? Because that's what it feels like being an empathetic person in a toxic or narcissistic relationship, for both of these ways that it shows up. And as I talk about this, I'm reminded that all of this can feel crazy making. I have learned that over time, that when I start making excuses, making a lot of excuses in situations in a specific relationship, that generally that's an indicator to me, when I start to get that real paranoid feeling and I'm trying to explain myself, explain it away, explain myself, make sure people understand, right? It's all really crazy making. And that can happen in either of these situations. So no matter which one, or maybe both of these ways that this can show up that you might find yourself in, it really truly can feel like you're going crazy, that you 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 feel like you're in this position and that maybe you're being taken advantage of. And sometimes you don't know it, right? Sometimes in the beginning you're learning those patterns. sometimes you don't recognize it, right? Narcissists can present themselves to us in different ways. So sometimes we don't recognize it right away. And if you've been in one narcissistic relationship, sometimes they show up in other ways. So, you might think for me, it was I knew I had a narcissistic ex. It never really dawned on me that there would be other people in my life. So that's the difference between you don't recognize it and you just don't know it. In the case of my ex, I just didn't know it. And in the case of some other people that I've come across since then, now that I know what I know, sometimes you're not ready to do something differently. And that's okay. That's okay. This is a process, and wherever you are in the process is okay. And sometimes you're in denial about it. And I say this with love, and I say this because I was in denial for many, many, many years. Many years I was in denial. No matter which of those pieces might apply, know that the narcissist is going to try to be the victim and divert away from from what's happening. And they're not going to take any responsibility for their emotional load, and they're going to put it on you when you're empathetic. And both of those things can be completely crazy making. Totally, completely, for sure, crazy making. This is why we talk about these things, right? At the risk of me sounding like I'm some bitter ex-wife, this is why we talk about it. Precisely so we can have a better understanding of what's happening, how it's happening, sometimes why it's happening. Sometimes that's the less relevant, which then allows us to be able to decide when and if we want to do something differently about it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get to the tips and tricks. All right, I'll see you in a minute. Are you finding yourself struggling in a relationship and wondering if you're dealing with a narcissist? You're not alone. And I've got a resource that can help. Get my 5 questions to confirm you're not the problem. This helps you identify the emotions associated with being in a controlling relationship. Just head over to locatecoaching.com/free gift and take the first step toward clarity and confidence in your relationships. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, it's time for the best part. You all know this is the best part. It's the tips and tricks. What can we do? What can we do? I love this part. What can I do when dealing with a toxic or narcissistic person and I don't want my empathetic nature to be taken advantage of any longer, or I don't want to lose that empathetic nature? One of the things, pardon me, being empathetic, having empathy, it is a superpower. It is a superpower to be empathetic, to be able to put yourself in the shoes of someone else, to help someone feel seen and heard and meet them where they are. It is a superpower. So please know that if you are in a relationship with someone that is taking advantage of your superpower, right? One, there are things you can do about it. That's where we get into these tips and tricks. And 2, the reason we want to follow through with those tips and tricks is so that we can maintain our superpower status. I give you permission to maintain your superpower status. Sometimes we need permission from someone other than ourselves. So here you have it. All right. So I want to mention that empathy without boundaries can become self-abandonment. Ooh, that one hurts, right? That one hurts. When we are empathetic, it is our nature to just say. I was going to say it was our nature to naturally say. My high school English teacher would be appalled. It is our nature to say, I understand that you're hurting. And we so genuinely and legitimately want to help someone when they are hurting, when they have something going on in their lives. Please know that you can't do this at the expense of abandoning yourself. And how this sometimes looks in a relationship is, I understand you're hurting, so I'll tolerate being hurt by you. And I just want you to know that understanding someone else's pain does not require you to accept being mistreated. Those two things do not have to go hand in hand. You can understand someone else's pain without falling into their narcissistic narrative and allow them to mistreat you. And kind of along those lines, when we look at boundaries, you don't have to feel guilty for protecting yourself, for protecting your peace, for protecting your space. Many empathetic people believe, and I did for a long time, if I set a boundary, I'm being selfish. You are not. You are not being selfish to create boundaries for yourself. And in a healthy relationship, the other party will gladly welcome your boundaries, not keep trying to force you to move your line. Go back and listen. We just recently did an episode on boundaries. So I don't know why I'm saying we. I don't know who the we is. The reality is that boundaries protect relationships. They don't threaten them. And without boundaries, particularly when you're empathetic, you start to feel resentment, right? I kind of said that in the first half, where when someone's pushing you and taking advantage of you time over time, you start to, resentment grows just naturally. And when that happens, we allow so much unnecessary negativity into our lives. Now, this is not about being Pollyanna. Oh, my life is so fantastic. Everything is great. That's not what I mean when I say inviting in the unnecessary negativity. When we don't have those boundaries, we are allowing the narcissist's narrative to dictate and control what we're doing. 100% you can be kind and still say no. No is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. And compassion and empathy and boundaries can coexist. They absolutely can. And it feels good when they coexist. It just feels like a relief. So next, stop confusing their explanations with excuses. This one for me, I have done this so many times. So much I've done this one. So this happens. I spent the majority of my divorce all those years in this role. We play the amateur detective, right? We're always trying to figure out why the person is doing what they're doing. And if we just understood why they were doing what they were doing, it would just make sense. But as we go through this process, the logical thing that we do, that it seems logical, is that we make excuses for them. So why, oh, why am I in this place? Why am I being treated this way? Well, his childhood was difficult. Her parents were abusive. Oh, he's just under so much stress. He's so stressed out. Oh, yeah. She does this because she's so afraid that I'm going to abandon her. Right? What are the excuses that show up for you from your narcissist's narrative? And by the way, all these things might be true. We can have challenging childhoods. We can have grown up in an abusive household. We can be incredibly stressed. We can have attachment issues that cause us to feel like we're going to be abandoned. All of those things can be the case. And none of them make abusive behaviors of any kind okay. None of them. Just because someone has had a challenging experience or is in a challenging experience does not mean that we, through our empathy, have to make excuses for how they treat us or others. And when we excuse away their behaviors like this, we are giving our power away. Think of it this way. While an explanation from someone might increase your compassion, might trigger that empathy muscle in you, it should never erase accountability on the part of the other person, right? That's where we see that won't take any responsibility and often shows up in a victim way, right? When I say that, I mean, the narcissist's narrative is, everything is happening to me, right? I can't do any, I couldn't control that. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head, I can't control that my dad dropped a $20,000 credit card bill on us. There's nothing I can do about that. Well, you gave him the credit card to start with, right? So, you did have some impact on the situation, right? When they take no accountability, no responsibility for the situation, for the narrative they're creating, right? We need to be careful about whether we excuse that behavior, excuse the behavior that comes from those seemingly reasonable explanations that they're giving us or we're making for them. All right. So this kind of moves us into this idea that not every problem belongs to you. Not every problem is yours to solve, right? As empathetic people, we often assume that we hold responsibility for fixing things for people, for rescuing people, for being that calming, mediating middle person, holding that middle ground, right? We often carry the problem for someone else. We often carry the problem for someone else. So when I give you these examples, anybody else feel those? Right? I've done all of those things. If you're relatively new to the podcast, I don't think I've said this in a while. I've made every mistake at least twice. So there is never any judgment or criticism here. I have done all of those things. I have assumed responsibility for other people's problems with the understanding that I was being empathetic and I was trying to help and care for them. Right? So how do you not do this? How do you learn and practice not doing this? Well, you start by saying to yourself, asking yourself, Is this my problem to solve? Is this my issue? Is this my responsibility? And really, really pay attention to the answer. Don't ask the question just to ask the question. Ask the question to really understand the answer and pay attention to it. And even in this case, consider letting your body lead, right? Because our body often knows things before our brain and certainly our heart catch up. So, especially if you are in a relationship that is with a partner or someone that you're really close to that you love, your brain and your heart can be slow to catch up to your body. So when you think about this question, is this my problem to solve or not? Do you contract physically or emotionally or both? Do you think, ooh, ah, right? And if the answer is no, this isn't mine to solve, then it's okay to put it down. It's okay to release it back into the wild and let whoever's issue it is pick it up and handle it, or not pick it up and don't handle it. But that's their decision. That's on them. It's not on you. There's an incredible freedom in learning this skill. It's not mine to solve. And particularly if you are in a helping profession, you can do this. You can show up for someone, and it's a gift to allow them to find their own space to address and fix the issue themselves. Kind of what can go hand in hand with this is when we have high levels of empathy, we often tend to feel guilty too, right? We feel guilty in this concept that I'm leaving them to their own devices. What are they going to do? We feel guilty for saying no. We feel guilty for setting boundaries. Oh man, do we feel guilty for choosing ourselves, especially when someone else is hurting. And let me tell you, the narcissist knows how to tap into that. They know how to help you to feel guilty. And I really wish someone had told me this a long time ago. When we feel guilty, that doesn't automatically mean we've done something wrong. It doesn't, right? True guilt is, oh, I did something wrong. What can I do about it? But in a toxic or narcissistic relationship, that person is cultivating that feeling in you so that you'll do what they want. So we got to stop and look at it. And sometimes it means choosing to balance your needs with someone else's instead of sacrificing everything that you need to meet theirs. And sometimes it means choosing you 100%, right? That's okay sometimes. It does not make us selfish. And in fact, when we choose ourselves, particularly in toxic or narcissistic relationships, when we choose ourselves, when we say, I don't need to feel bad about this. This boundary is my boundary and I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold that line. That's healthy. It's healthy for us to do that. And if someone's trying to convince you otherwise, it's just something to think about why that is. As empathetic people, we genuinely want good things for the people in our lives, for people, right? I can go into the post office, and as an empathetic person, I just feel like the guy in line in front of me, right? I hope he's having a good day, right? It doesn't, it's an embodiment of who we are as empathetic people. We want good things for others. We want to, for the people that we know, we want to encourage them. We want to support them. We want to help others succeed. This is the good form of othering of another friend that listens. I hope you get a giggle out of that. we talk about othering. As empathetic people, we want others to succeed, to have good lives. And when we do that sometimes as empathetic individuals, we become fixers, right? We try to fix. And we can spend so much time trying to solve the problems of other people, to ease their pain, to rescue someone from the consequences of their choices. That happens a lot with a narcissist. It can show up in addiction, where we want to rescue someone from the consequences of their choices. I'm not an expert in addiction, but that can happen. Then when that happens, we're trying to rescue someone or solve their problems. We can forget one really important truth, and that is you can't want more for someone than they want for themselves. You just simply can't. And that may sound really harsh. I know for a long time I felt like that was really harsh. But in actuality, it's one of the most compassionate things we can learn. People change when they're ready to change. Not because we love them enough, not because we explain it to them for the umpteenth time, and now we finally have explained it right. Not that we have sacrificed for them for long enough. People change when they're ready to change. And here's a little side tip. Here's the pro tip. If you are in a toxic relationship or a relationship with a narcissist, and they can look a little bit different, that person is likely not ever going to change. They are going to keep you engaged in the game as long as they can, because that's the long game they're playing. You guys aren't even on the same board. So I really want to stress that your empathy is a beautiful, beautiful gift. Practice making sure that you don't use it to carry the responsibilities that were never yours to carry. You can't make anyone else do anything they don't want to do. And in a narcissistic relationship, they've got you tied up in knots trying to get you to do those things, because that's the game they're playing. You don't have to play their game. Which leads us into our final tip, and that is, do not ignore your intuition because your empathy is trying to be louder. This is so, so big in toxic or narcissistic relationships. Your intuition may be whispering at you. It might also be screaming at you. It might be whispering that something feels off. So if it's your empathy that answers, yes, but. Yes, but. Think about what they've been through. Yes, but. They had a terrible childhood. Yes, but. They can't help it. If your empathy answers to your intuition's whispering or screaming at you, and your empathy is working on drowning out your intuition, that's a huge red flag, and it can be catastrophic. Not to be all dramatic or anything. Ignoring your intuition, especially in a narcissistic relationship, it'll get you every time. They'll get you every time. When you have healthy empathy, it listens both to that caring part as well as your self-preservation part. Both of those parts can exist. So I invite you to really listen to that intuition. What's instinct telling you, and follow it. I hope that these tips have provided you with something to chew on, something to think about, giving you a little insight about ways that you can shift the connection with your toxic or narcissistic person in your life, while also allowing you to maintain who you are. Empathy is a superpower. Don't give it up easily. If this episode hit home, send it to someone you care about, please. And remember, you don't have to become less empathetic. In a toxic or narcissistic relationship, you simply have to become more discerning about where your empathy belongs, who gets your gift of empathy. If you're not already following the podcast, make sure you do so you don't miss what's coming next. You have got this. One thought, one choice, one action at a time. As we wrap up, here's the thing. I've made every mistake. I've literally been there and done that. It's one step at a time, and you'll get there. There's hope. You've got this. If you're struggling in a relationship and wondering if it might be controlling, you're not alone. Download my free PDF at locatecoaching.com/free gift to help you find clarity and confidence. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon.